today is hopefully to present what I hope to be a fiscally responsible budget for us today. And my presentation will be very similar to Rick's as far as starting with the numbers, going through the specific lines, and then ending with cuts and priorities. You're certainly welcome to chime in at any point during the presentation. I really appreciate that, and I think we've already engaged in some really great conversations about student teaching and learning, and that's my favorite, that's my passion. So if you look at the by the numbers, there's a couple things that may stand out to you depending on your historical knowledge of Elm Street. But the percentage of students eligible for services has gone up.
Sorry, Ryan. Several of us don't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, do you have any extras over
Yes,
there?
I have lots of extras.
Okay.
The percentage of students receiving services has gone up.
I think we got her on this side.
Wait just
We
one
got
second.
stuck someplace.
Yeah, we're distracted because we're trying to pad this out. There we go.
Anybody else?
And we actually had 9%.
Hold out just one second.
There we go.
I think they didn't get, on this end, so.
Do you have Elm Street?
Yeah, I don't think I was stuck at the end of the table.
Okay.
So there's an extra.
She's got two.
All right, we're good.
We did have 9% of students move in this summer from other districts and other states that came to us with IEPs. So the percentage of students identified has increased since last year. And surprisingly, the percent of free and reduced lunch has not increased. I really question those numbers based on the amount of applications that I processed and just based on my knowledge of the school and the students. But I sat down with our nutrition director and went over all the reports, and that was the percentage that we came up with as of February 23rd. Another interesting thing about Elm Street is we have 5 new teachers, and so that's going to impact the budget in different ways, whether positive or negative. So we did talk a little bit about cutting professional development, and it does make me sad just with the amount of new teachers at Elm Street. Since we have 15, with 5 new, that's 33%. So that idea of cutting professional development and cutting books saddens me just because new teachers, I think, need a little bit more support. But my hope is being a little bit creative with the budget, and we talked a little bit about maybe certain teachers where the areas of need are getting more funding to support their classrooms and support them in their professional development will be a way to make this budget work for Elm Street School. Does anyone have any other questions about by the numbers?
So how many students did you have last year?
The number of students is very similar.
Okay.
It's just like the number of identified students has
It's more the
increased.
number of identified students.
Correct.
Ryan, is the social worker, is that a decrease? Was it part-time and has gone to 0.4 or?
So,
Or is this the special ed social
That
worker?
would be special ed.
Okay.
so in order to meet the social and emotional needs of the students at Elm Street, there is a special ed social worker, which is the 0.4 contracted service, and then there's a 0.6 social worker also to meet the needs, social emotional needs for Elm Street School. So overall, Elm Street has a total increase at 1%, which equals $19,127.26. And Tina and Rick have talked about some of the changes in benefits and salaries based on contract. And so when we look over and go over this budget today, you'll see the very same thing. You'll also notice the decreases in the instructional supplies and the employee professional development lines, which we have spent a lot of time talking about as well. So why don't we look a little bit deeper? How about if I just give you a minute or two just to look it over before I start?
And I just want to do a check with everybody. Do you feel comfortable that Ryan doesn't need to explain why the guidance counselor's salary is 4% more instead of 3%, and that the benefits might be up or down? Are those lines, everybody kind of understands how that has gone through? So if something's really familiar, you've already explained it, Ryan, feel free just to move right over that into the areas that you think are unique to Elm Street School.
Great, thank you. So when I think about the front page, I think about any percentages that are either unusually high or unusually low to discuss with you today. And fourth one down, stipends, that was decreased 3,100 just to meet the language in the contract and to meet the number of leadership positions that Elm Street needs for their school. So in other words, the line was over budgeted based on the number of teacher leaders there should be in the building. So it just matches what the needs are. So you'll see a decrease there. And then if you go down, you'll see that the technology-related line increased by 402%, and that's related to the laptop cart. And we did talk about today that our students are going to be responsible for taking a new state test. It has the same name, but it's really going to require students to be digital citizens and to be knowledgeable about keyboarding and all the different tools that computers offer. And Elm Street has many outdated computers in the carts, and the hope would be to have a new and updated cart to be able to address the skills that students need to be successful for the MEA test. So that is a 402% increase. And the line above it, although Linda's going to talk more about this, that is a 60% increase, and that's for projectors for the teachers to use in their classrooms. Not all of the teachers at Elm Street currently have projectors, and part of the strategic plan and the hope is that every teacher has a projector for when they're instructing with students.
Ryan, a quick question if I could. Kind of just below the middle of the page, the purchase professional technical services, decrease of $759 or decrease 25%. Do you see that line?
I do.
And so is that that's an administrative thing? So it's
those are all technology. So Linda will cover those.
Linda will talk about
Yeah.
that.
Ryan, the projectors you just talked about, and one of the things that we're working towards is equity across the district, and I would just wondered if PCS and mine, do those teachers each have projectors, or is that in the budget also?
Now, if you would wait until
Yep.
Linda goes, but that's exactly what's happening is you're going to see, we started last year making sure that we had some equitable services, and this is part of a 3-year plan. So I really want to make sure the technology is covered by Linda, because you'll get the bigger picture, and she has the facts really well understood. So.
Great. If you look at the 2400 line for principal benefits, there's a different principal taking different benefits, so that's why that has decreased. So I'll turn to page 2.
That's you.
Yes. You'll notice the front, the employee training and development, there wasn't a line for that this year, and the hope is that the principal in the building has a line in order to develop professionally, whether it's participating in conferences, going to the MPA conferences, participating in different publications, and there wasn't a line for that. So the hope would be that the principal there now would have that line available for professional development, which is why there's a 0 this year, and the hope would be to have some money there for next year. If you go down the line on the principal line for dues and fees, that's just related to the increase in membership fees for the Maine Principals Association, the National Association for Elementary School Principals, and Optimist Club. So those are memberships that the principal belongs to, and the cost of those memberships increased, so that's why you see an increase there. If you continue to go down the line, a lot of that, the 2600 line, Gary or Kim is going to be covering. So you'll see some increases and decreases there.
What is the 2600?
That's the facilities. That's all the custodial work, the maintenance of the building in general. And if you look at my sheet, it's all this area in the blue. That's all going to be presented by Kim in the future.
And if you look at the 2610 line, that's also facilities, and you'll see that there was money added in for to stipend for the snow plow removal.
Is that is that the substitute line?
That's the substitute line,
Substitute
correct.
snow removal?
Correct,
Got
yes.
it, okay, great.
And if you go to the 1,000 line, you'll see that one of the ed techs was paid out of a different account, and that payment has been moved. So that's why you'll see a negative 100% under ed tech salary. And if you look at the teacher salary, you'll see that increase just basically due to contractual responsibilities and obligations. And you'll also see the ed tech benefits drop to zero because that position has been moved to the appropriate line. Moving on to page 3. The front one there, since that position was moved to the right line, the retirement also dropped down to zero. If you look at the purchase professional services line, 53,000, 1,100, that increased 1,000 due to the cost of Ferry Beach and due to the decrease of funding from Poland Spring. If you go to employee training and development, you'll notice that went down 60%, and I talked about the worry with having the number of new teachers, and but my hope is that the Wednesday professional development time that we have in place will continue to support those teachers, as well as the opportunity to apply for Title II funds to support our teachers around professional development related to books. So even though that decreased, there are other opportunities for the professional development to take place. Tina talked about the tuition to charter schools being taken out of the budget. And so if you continue to go down, our music teacher moved to a new space, and in that new space, the music teacher has some needs, and so that's why the music budget increased by 32%. That music teacher is requesting certain materials and supplies to make the new space that they're in more music friendly. And if you go down the line, you'll notice the teacher salary line went down due to the number of new teachers. However, the benefit line went up due to the number of new teachers. So they almost balance each other out.
So are these new teachers who were hired, the new teachers because they're lower on the salary scale compared to those who retired?
Correct.
Got it.
So that's why that line went down and then the benefit line went up. You'll see the cut in the instructional supplies of $4,214. And we've talked a lot about, different materials, math materials, handwriting without tears materials, different journals, Time for Kids, different newsletters teachers belong to. I was gracious enough to have PTO cover the cost of Ruth's this year, which was $900. So being that that line was cut, I may ask for support from PTO again to help cover some of the costs of those instructional supply lines as well. The 4-year-old program, the salary went up because the teacher that was employed at Elm Street has transferred to another school. And so the teacher hired to teach pre-K at Elm Street School came in with more experience and more years experience. So that's why the cost of their salary went up 49%. And the teacher benefits also, because that person is now a pre-K teacher, and so the benefits changed because the staff member changed. And that's why the benefit line went up 296%. And the last 4-year-old program item, the purchase professional services, both of those last two were combined together, and they were equalized based on all 3 schools. So all 3 pre-Ks have the same amount of money to support the pre-K program. So the change in 1,200, part of it was moved to the line below it, and then that line was equalized for all 3 schools and their pre-K programs. Does anyone have questions?
The music teacher from the elementary school is shared, or?
Correct. The music teacher is shared between Elm Street School and Minot Consolidated School, but we moved the music teacher's classroom at Elm Street, and so in the new classroom, that teacher had some needs that they requested that have been put in the budget for next year.
We have quite a few, like PCS has almost no teachers that are shared or limited because they need a full-time teacher, but it's not uncommon at Minot and Elm Street to share PE teacher, to share, art and music, because they're half the size.
Great. Thank you. So we'll go to the back page, which is the cuts and priorities for Elm Street School for 2016. I talked about cutting some instructional supplies from the K-2 line. I talked about the implications of cutting employee professional development and training. And part of that total of $4,706 was the hope of going to Teachers College, which is a summer institute in Columbia, New York, where teachers who are implementing the Writers' Workshop, the hope would be that they would be able to go and participate in that training to bring back to our district. That has been cut. So that's part of that $4,706 that was removed.
Can teachers use money from, that go towards courses? Can they use that for this, or no?
For the teacher contract, tuition is a separate negotiated item. It's for college courses. For the ed techs, theirs combines the two. So they can either go to courses or take courses or go to workshops for their $750 that they get for professional development. So we have separate lines, and like I said, Title II money is pretty much designated for professional development. So we can pay to send teachers to conferences out of that line, or out of our own district funding that we have for employee training. We have quite a lot of money in there, and I don't have the number off the top of my head what our allocation was, but I think it might be around $60,000, so it's pretty significant.
Total for the district?
Yeah,
and you're gonna divvy that up?
Yes, I will verify the actual. Wendy might have it. She can get that for us, and we can share what our total funding is. And for the last few years, we haven't used it, and so we've asked to carry it over. And you can only carry over a certain amount of percent typically, and we've asked for waivers to carry over more. So we certainly can put that to better use. And the reason we haven't is we just keep having changes of staff, and we're doing so much right here that we don't have a lot of. We're trying to do the professional development and get teachers prepared for the initiatives that we have right in-house that come from state required work, like our teacher evaluation system, the MEA, Smarter Balanced stuff, the proficiency-based diplomas. There's so many state required things that we have not been sending them out to additional conferences, but there is money in Title II that we're going to put in the place of this money.
Right, because it sounds like you're not using the entire
Exactly.
amount anyway, so
Right.
that it would be available.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
that is
Yeah, that's why I made that suggestion that the professional development lines or our employee training lines be reduced. And the Wednesdays have made a huge difference because we can do a lot of the curriculum work at that time. So that's a help as well.
And last year during our budget discussions, we also talked about the writing workshops, and Rick mentioned it this morning. So is it possible that maybe some of that could be funded through the title?
It could be. Teachers College is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
You saw Rick's lines were, $15,000 worth of professional development. And so so it's a hard decision to spend that much on a few teachers. Rather than bringing someone in and having all teachers get quality training. So last year, what we did in place of Teachers College is I hired a woman who's a literacy specialist and does professional trainings to come in and teach a 3-day summer session. We had 23 students or staff members take that course, and it got very high remarks. So my goal is to bring her back in. And I think we might have paid her $2,500 for the week, and we had 23 teachers get really high quality training. So I'm more inclined to bring really high quality people into the district and have more people benefit than to send people to New York, expensive hotel costs and food when it's a limited number of staff that can go. And the only time I think Teachers College is very expensive, but it also is the way they draw the names, we're not guaranteed they get in. So
It's a
Yeah.
phenomenal experience, but it's a phenomenal experience. It would support our implementation of the Writers' Workshop thoroughly. But like Tina said, the issues would be we would be sending teams of teachers to go for a week-long session, hopefully, and then they would bring that back to the school, which isn't the same exposure as having all of your teachers have the same experience. However, it's Lucy Calkins, it's her thing, and there would be a lot to be gained, but again, when we're trying to balance the money.
And when we consider the lottery, that just makes it that much unknown. We could budget to have 10 teachers go, 3 from Minot, 3 from Elm Street, 6 from, or whatever the number left, 4 from Poland, and maybe only the Minot people get selected and nobody else gets to go. So you have no idea whether the people you've chosen to participate are going to be selected, or that it'll be in any equitable manner. We have no control over that. So those are the things that make it hard to really say that's a biggest priority when we have so many other needs, like our math program, or other better ways that we could get more people trained for less money. So it did come up last year. We still think it's important. We'd love to do it. And we could choose to do it out of Title II if the administrative team decides that's the biggest priority.
And the final cut was a request for surveillance equipment for the perimeter in the parking lot of the building at Elm Street. There are currently 0 cameras around Elm Street School, and I wonder about the pre-K playground being so close to the main road, and I also wonder about the parking lot with adult education, and then I also wonder about the playground in general and not having any surveillance system in place. Should an issue ever happen. We haven't had anything happen, but I just wonder about that. So there was a request for some 360-degree cameras that PRHS has. I actually met with a rep that goes through PRHS and to learn a little bit more about the cameras and how they work and maybe where they might go in the parking lots of the Elm Street School. So that was another cut, but you'll probably hear me ask for that forever, as long as I'm here. So, but that was another cut as well.
Really quickly, did the other elementary schools have that external surveillance?
No.
No, okay.
None of our elementaries.
We have a camera because our office area is not, we can't
You can't see, right.
the parking lot, so we do have a camera, and I believe there are like 6 or 7 locations that it is spotted to, that
Mhm.
it sees. So, but because we can't see it, we don't have any windows to the parking lot. So.
Yeah, and that's one of the conversations that we had as administrative team as well, is that we haven't, you don't want to set yourself up for being vulnerable, but at the same time, we don't have a huge problem with people vandalizing our buildings or other things happening in our parking lots and that kind of stuff at the elementary school. So we're very fortunate to live in a rural community that's been relatively safe and secure. And but as times change, we all know increased safety is something that is constantly on our mind. And but again, our other schools don't have that at the K-6 level.
And then the 3 major priorities, we've spent a lot of time talking about math and the additional laptop and projector carts, but there has been a request for a halftime school counselor at Elm Street School and shared between ESS and MCS. And part of it is, we talked a little bit about the essential services and program funding model, and that there should be a guidance counselor or a school counselor, 1 for every 350 students. And between MCS and ESS, we have 350 students, and we do not currently have a school counselor. And then the other challenge is without a school counselor, there isn't a social emotional curriculum, and not every child is being exposed or introduced to social emotional curriculum. And so there's the piece about equitable opportunities between all the schools, and I think it's important to have a social emotional curriculum for students to be exposed to all children. And then the final piece is when we talk about intensifying interventions, without a curriculum and without standards around social emotional health, then there aren't interventions in place to support students who aren't meeting those standards. You have to have the standards in order to have the intervention to support the students who aren't meeting it. One thing that really opened my eyes was talking to Carrie and Sean about the needs of middle school students, and how sometimes if a child has a need when they're young and it's not supported, by the time they get to the middle and high school, the need becomes so big that at times it can be overwhelming to support that child. They may be in crisis at that point, and had there been a school counselor at the younger levels to support those children, maybe the needs wouldn't end up being so big as the child's getting older. So the hope would be to have a staff member who's certified and trained to deliver classroom instruction around the social emotional needs, to have a staff member who is trained to create a curriculum that's developmental and appropriate for all of our children, and then to have those interventions in place to support students who need additional support. Right now, it doesn't exist at Elm Street or at Minot Consolidated School. So I think it's really important. I think at Elm Street, and I'm sure at Minot, the needs are there are specific needs there that children have, and it would be great to have someone there that could help meet those needs for them.
And I think it's important to link that back to our strategic plan. So A1C is really about intensifying interventions, which Ryan is talking about. And in 2012, the legislature enacted the requirement that for RTI, which is response to intervention. So we are required to provide interventions for students who aren't meeting standards in reading, math, and behavior. And right now, we are providing some interventions in reading and math, but in those two schools, we do not have a guidance counselor that can provide interventions for students who are struggling. So some can meet with a social worker, but that's different. They're not doing the proactive or the teaching of the standards, they're counseling. And so it's a whole different focus for them. So it is really important that as a district, that we're realizing that we do have students with significant behavior issues. It's one of the reasons we have so many out-of-district students, and why that budget is, instead of $315,000, is $487,000 next year. So it could be a cost savings for us in 3 and 4 years if we are doing a curriculum early and we're meeting those needs before they spiral.
Last year, through the budget process, we hired a behavioral specialist.
Yes.
Now, how does that person work into that intervention model, and how would they work with a counselor?
So she's district-wide, and what our behavior mentor is doing, and maybe Holly will want to add to this, but she's basically been hired to work with the classroom teachers, so at the Tier 1 level, and if the teacher needs help trying to implement strategies that will help a particular child or a group of children, she does some training on that on a one-on-one basis with a teacher. And it is with our most critical or severe cases, because there's one person for 5 buildings, but it definitely is a piece of RTI, which we started last year, and this is that next level. And I don't know if Holly wants to add.
So the behavior specialist is an advisory position, so
Yes.
that person does not work directly with the student.
That's exactly right. Her role is to make sure the teachers can work with the
So
children.
basically training the teacher.
Yes.
She may do some observations, she may do some reporting, but then it's sharing that with the classroom teacher and helping the classroom teacher come up with a plan. The other comment I'd like to make on the request for the half-time school counselor is that, so currently Ryan and I have a 2.5-day coverage with our social workers, but 2.5 days we don't have staff on board to help in crisis situations or to help with kids who are just kind of falling apart. So by having that half-time school counselor, we would be covered in that area, like for 5 days a week.
I was gonna ask, so right now, for some support with this, you have a social worker, which is separate from the behavioral
Yeah.
health
And
specialist.
half-time.
2.5 days a week,
Right?
Yeah.
And then, those are both shared.
yes.
Well, one of them's
They're different
district-wide,
people.
Yes,
behavioral health,
yes.
Yeah.
But the social worker's shared.
No,
No.
2 different people.
Two
We have
half.
2.5, just with one person.
3/5, yeah.
Okay.
Two half-time.
And then this person would just supplement as well.
This one would actually be teaching students, social, emotional topics. So, if there's mean girl things going on in 5th grade, there may be a curriculum. There would be a curriculum of, character type things of like, how do you handle this type of situation? Or in 1st grade, it might be, something totally different. Yeah. So they actually have a curriculum, and there is a curriculum that the state has expectations for guidance instruction, which we are not providing at this point.
What does the social worker do?
The social worker is a counselor, so they
So
pull.
just meet individually?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the.
More of a family focus.
And they have more of a family focus. So counselors aren't trained to provide curriculum necessarily. That's not in their scope of
Social
training.
workers.
Social
Social workers,
yes,
right.
social workers. And so we're looking for a guidance counselor who has that curriculum training and that next piece of it that we don't provide any resources for in 2 of our schools. And again, it comes back to the equity. We have that service at PCS, and not at the other two schools.
I think an easy way for me to wrap my head around it when I think about the difference, because I'm lucky I have both. So wrapping my head around it is my school counselor does the classroom lessons. They go into the classroom and work with the whole class of kids, teaching those same lessons to everybody, working with all the kids around those issues. And we'll deal with maybe small group. If there's, girl fighting or boy fighting or girl and boy fighting, whatever it is, she'll deal with small groups of kids. The social worker more often deals with kids on an individual basis, that this may be, an issue for this child alone, rather than a group, or it's something that we want all our kids to have the same understanding about.
And maybe, or the way I wrap my head around it too, is the social worker is really more on a mental health, a higher level of support
Yes.
for kids with deeper
Individual
mental health.
crises.
Yes,
Or
yeah.
deeper mental, maybe mental health, long-lasting mental health issues. School counselors really educate, everybody gets the benefit of a school counselor. Whether it's conflict resolution or good touch, bad touch, or, all that is so important for all students to get, and we just don't have that.
So if you had the counselor in addition to the social worker, and you were able to juggle the schedules just so, you might actually be able to have somebody in each building all the time available,
That's-
so when
that's our
crisis
goal.
occur,
Yes.
there would be somebody available.
Yep. And we talked yesterday, if, for instance, a crisis were to arise that required more of a social work, a real big crisis, then, we would know that we need to be flexible.
each
And
other.
we'd call each
Call.
other and say, we've had a real crisis.
Yeah.
Could we have the social work?
Well, thank you.
Okay. Wait, Brian have a few more priorities?
He had the math curriculum and the laptop.
Yes.
So similar to, yeah.
So first, I'm going to pass around a packet that has the numbers and the budget, and then I'm going to pass around the